I lived with Megan for nearly 6 years. When we met, Chloe was 7, loud in a way that wasn't joy, stubborn in a way that wasn't strength. She had that guarded look children wear when someone has already left them once. Her biological father, Ryan, had walked out a year earlier. No dramatic explosion, no screaming match, just absence. One day present, the next reduced to stories and excuses. We lived in a suburb outside Austin, in a house that always felt slightly off balance. The fence leaned crooked like it was tired of holding the line. The gutters sagged. The air conditioner rattled every summer like it was begging to be replaced. There was always a bill overdue, always a quiet tension hovering in the corners. I didn't come in like a hero. I didn't promise to fix everything. I just started working. I repaired the fence first, then the sink that wouldn't stop leaking, then the credit card balance that had been snowballing since Ryan left. I refinanced the mortgage under better terms, consolidated debts, took over the utilities, quietly moved my direct deposit into the joint account. I never once asked to be called Dad. I never erased Ryan's name from Chloe's vocabulary. I never told her to forget him. I understood something simple: you don't compete with ghosts. You outlast them. So I stayed. I drove her to school when Megan's shift started too early. I sat through dance recitals where she barely looked at me. I paid for summer camps that she'd later tell her friends her dad had encouraged. I helped with homework, fixed broken bikes, replaced cracked phone screens. And every time I swiped my card, I told myself the same thing. Effort becomes recognition. It has to, but recognition never came. Not really. Chloe tolerated me. That was the word. Tolerated. Like background noise. Like furniture that pays the mortgage. When she got angry, she sharpened her words carefully. You're not my real dad. It was never screamed, never hysterical, always measured, controlled, as if she wanted to remind me of my rank in the household hierarchy. Ryan, meanwhile, drifted in and out like a seasonal storm. A birthday visit with an expensive gift he probably couldn't afford. A sudden promise to take her for the weekend. Then silence again. No child support check. No help with tuition savings. Just enough presence to remain mythic. And Megan always found a way to excuse him. He's trying. He's just going through something. He loves Chloe in his own way. In his own way. I learned that in this house absence had charm. Presence had responsibility. Years passed. Chloe grew taller, sharper, more certain. I worked harder. Promotions came, but so did longer hours. I picked up freelance contracts at night to make sure Chloe could attend a better private school. I told myself she would see it one day. That gratitude sometimes takes time. Megan thanked me, often, quietly, in private. But gratitude behind closed doors doesn't rewrite what happens at the dinner table. The fracture showed itself clearly at her mother's house. It was one of those suffocating family dinners where everything is polished to hide the cracks. Heavy porcelain plates, silverware laid out precisely, polite conversation that never goes too deep. We were discussing finances in passing, rising costs, school programs, maybe even a family trip someday. Megan mentioned, almost casually, how I'd taken care of most of it, how stable things had become. Her mother nodded approvingly, offering that thin smile older women give when they assess a man's usefulness. Chloe didn't smile. She didn't glare either. She simply looked at me, fork poised midair, and said calmly, "He's not family. He just pays the bills." No venom, no tremble, just certainty. The sentence landed softly, too softly, like something rehearsed long ago. No one corrected her. Her grandmother shifted in her seat but said nothing. An uncle coughed into his napkin. Megan stared down at her plate as if the glaze pattern had suddenly become fascinating. Silence is louder than any insult. I waited for Megan to say something. Anything. Even a weak defense. Nothing came. And in that silence, something inside me settled into place. A truth I had been avoiding for years crystallized in an instant. My role had already been defined. Provider, not partner, not father, not family. A wallet with a pulse. I finished my meal, thanked her mother for dinner, helped clear the dishes, played the part one last time. On the drive home, Megan tried to soften it. She didn't mean it like that. She's just protective of her dad. She's still adjusting. 6 years. Still adjusting. I nodded, said nothing, because I realized something she hadn't. Chloe didn't speak impulsively. She spoke with the confidence of someone who knows the room agrees with her. That night, I lay in bed beside Megan while she scrolled through her phone, the glow lighting her face. She didn't apologize. She didn't revisit it. She treated it like a small bruise that would fade on its own. But it didn't fade. I stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly in the dark and replayed Chloe's tone in my head. Not anger. Not rebellion. Definition. He just pays the bills. I thought about every overtime shift. Every transfer into the savings account. Every time I'd chosen their stability over my own comfort. And I realized something brutal. If I was only the wallet, then the wallet could close. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, the illusion dissolved. I had been trying to earn a place that no one intended to give me. By morning, I wasn't angry. I was clear. The morning after that dinner, nothing looked different. The fence was still crooked. The kitchen light still flickered when you flipped the switch too fast. Chloe still left her cereal bowl in the sink like someone else existed to rinse it. But I had changed. I didn't slam doors. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't demand an apology that would never come. I simply moved through the house with a new understanding. I had been mistaken about my position. That realization didn't feel explosive. It felt surgical, clean, precise. I went to work like always, sat through meetings, signed off on reports, nodded when my boss praised my reliability. Reliable, that word again. I had built my entire identity around it. That afternoon, instead of driving home immediately, I parked in an empty lot near the bank. I opened my laptop. For years, I had structured everything carefully. Chloe's student fund had my name as primary contributor and guarantor. The car Megan drove was financed under a loan I had guaranteed with my credit history. The credit extension on their joint card relied on my income bracket. The emergency savings account had my automatic transfers attached. All of it built by my hands. All of it assumed permanent. I didn't hesitate. First, I canceled the automatic monthly transfer to Chloe's college fund. Then I initiated a revision request with the bank, removing myself as guarantor on any future educational loans. The process was clinical. Forms, confirmation codes, digital signatures. No anger, just correction. Next, the car loan. I filed paperwork withdrawing my guarantee. The bank would require a new cosigner within 30 days. I knew that. I understood the pressure it would create. But pressure isn't cruelty. It's consequence. Then I shut down the credit card linked directly to my account. The one used for groceries, for Chloe's extracurricular fees, for spontaneous expenses Megan never told me about until the balance appeared. I didn't block it. Closed it. Cleanly. I notified the bank that I was stepping out of all shared financial obligations effective immediately. The representative asked if there had been fraud. No, I said calmly. Just restructuring. Restructuring. That's what it was. On the drive home, I felt something unfamiliar. Not rage. Not sorrow. Relief. When I walked through the door that evening, nothing in the house acknowledged what I had done. Chloe was in her room. Megan was on the couch scrolling through her phone. "Dinner's in the fridge," she said casually. I nodded. A normal evening. I ate quietly, washed my plate, went to the bedroom, and then I gathered my documents. Passport, employment contracts, insurance papers, account statements. I placed them into a slim black folder I'd bought years ago and never used. Megan noticed. "What are you doing?" she asked from the doorway. "Organizing," I replied. She studied me for a second, as if trying to detect something in my tone. Then she shrugged and went back to the living room. That was the last chance. Not for apology, for awareness. But none came. Around midnight, I loaded the folder into my car. I didn't pack clothes. I didn't take furniture. I took what legally belonged to me, and I left. No note, no dramatic speech. Silence had defined my role. Silence would define my exit. The next morning, a registered letter arrived addressed to Chloe. A formal notice from the financial institution outlining revised terms of her student fund and any associated loan guarantees. It stated clearly that my name was no longer attached. No hostility, just fact. My phone began ringing before noon. Megan first, then Chloe. Call after call after call. I watched the screen light up while sitting in a small rented office space I had secured earlier that week. I didn't answer, not because I was hiding, because I had nothing left to explain. An hour later, Megan texted, "What is this about?" Another, "Is this some kind of punishment?" Then Chloe, "Why did the bank send me this?" I responded once. 3 words. "Ask your father." And I meant it. Ryan. The real one. The man whose name carried more weight in that house than my presence ever did. I assembled copies of every document related to Chloe's education fund, car loan, and household financial structure. I included a concise letter outlining what obligations would now require a new guarantor. I addressed the package to Ryan. Certified delivery. If my role was merely financial, then the financial role could transfer to the man who held the title that mattered. By evening, Megan's messages shifted tone. "You're taking this too personally. This is extreme." She didn't mean it like that. There it was again. Minimization. As if 6 years could be dismissed the same way my position had been. I didn't respond. That night, I checked into a modest apartment in San Marcos. No yard, no shared bills, no crooked fence. Just white walls and quiet. For the first time in years, the silence belonged to me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone as it continued to vibrate on the nightstand. Megan. Chloe. Unknown number, probably Ryan. I turned it face down. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I had simply stepped out of a role assigned to me without consent. If I was not family when I gave, then I was under no obligation to remain when I withdrew. And as the calls continued unanswered, I realized something else. For the first time in 6 years, I felt not rejected. Not used, but defined. The system didn't collapse in one dramatic explosion. It unraveled. Quietly, methodically, exactly the way I had constructed it. 3 days after I left, the bank issued a formal notice requiring a new guarantor for the car loan. Without one, the interest rate would spike and repayment terms would tighten. Insurance flagged the policy because the primary financial backer had withdrawn. Tuition payments scheduled for the upcoming semester were returned due to authorization change. Everything I had built was held together by my signature. Remove the signature, and the structure remembers who it truly belongs to. Megan's messages shifted from confusion to accusation. "You're humiliating us. Chloe is panicking. This is a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. I stared at that word longer than I should have. There had been no misunderstanding at the dinner table. Chloe had been precise, calm, certain. He just pays the bills. The phone rang again that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. Chloe's voice came through strained, stripped of its usual sharpness. "They said my college fund is frozen until a new guarantor signs. Mom says you did this. Why would you do this?" "I didn't mean." The message cut off before she finished. For years I had imagined what an apology from her would sound like. I used to think it would soften me instantly, that hearing regret in her voice would erase every slight. But listening to that voicemail, I heard something else. Fear. Not remorse. Fear of inconvenience. Fear of instability. I didn't return the call. Instead, I checked my accounts. My salary now redirected into a private account under my sole name. Joint subscriptions canceled. Utility auto payments removed. Insurance policies updated. Each click felt less like revenge and more like correction. In San Marcos, my apartment was small but ordered. 1 bedroom, 1 desk, 1 kitchen table. No echoes of comparison. No ghost father floating in and out. Just clarity. Ryan called that evening. I answered. Silence lingered for a second before he spoke. "What the hell is this paperwork you sent me?" His voice carried irritation, not responsibility. "It's documentation," I replied evenly. "Educational funds, loan structures, financial obligations that were previously underwritten by me." He exhaled sharply. "You can't just dump this on me." I leaned back in the chair, staring at the blank wall in front of me. "She's your daughter." Another pause. "That's not the point." But it was exactly the point. For 6 years, the man whose blood defined legitimacy had not carried the financial weight of that legitimacy. He had visited when convenient, sent gifts when symbolic, avoided the burdens. And now the burdens were knocking. "She told me I wasn't family," I said quietly. "You are. Congratulations." He muttered something under his breath. Something about timing, about money being tight, about this being petty. Petty. I almost smiled. "Step up," I said. "Or don't." "But I won't." And I ended the call. 2 days later, Megan appeared at my apartment unannounced. I knew she would eventually. She stood outside my door looking smaller than I remembered. The confidence she wore in familiar spaces was gone. "You're destroying everything," she said the moment I opened the door. I didn't invite her inside. "No," I answered calmly. I removed myself. Her eyes filled with frustration. "Chloe's applications are pending. The bank needs a guarantor. The car, we can't afford a rate increase. This affects her future." I held her gaze. Her future was built on someone she doesn't consider family. "That was one comment," Megan snapped. "One sentence." "It was a definition," I replied. She shook her head, exasperated. "You're overreacting. She's a teenager. Teenagers say cruel things. And adults choose whether to tolerate them." The air between us thickened. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Might acknowledge the silence at that dinner table. Might admit she had let the words stand unchallenged. But she didn't. Instead she said, "You're taking away stability out of pride." There it was. Pride. As if dignity were vanity. "I gave stability," I said quietly. "I'm not required to subsidize rejection." She looked at me like I was someone unfamiliar. Maybe I was. Because the man who would have absorbed the insult and continued paying was gone. "I thought you loved us," she whispered. I didn't flinch. "I did." Past tense. Her expression hardened at that. "You're punishing Chloe." "No," I answered. "I'm allowing her words to mean something." Silence settled between us again. In that silence, she understood. Not that I was cruel, but that I was finished. She left without another word. Within a week, the practical consequences intensified. The bank sent a final notice demanding updated guarantor documentation. Tuition deadlines loomed. Insurance coverage lapsed temporarily until payment adjustments were made. Ryan had not stepped in. Of course he hadn't. Chloe texted once more. "I get it. You're mad. But this is affecting my life." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "So did your words." No anger. No lecture. Just equivalence. In my apartment, the evenings were quiet. I cooked simple meals. I slept without tension in my chest. I woke without anticipating dismissal. For the first time in years, my effort served only myself. And the strangest part? I didn't feel empty. I felt clean. The system I had built faltered because it was never truly shared. It was supported by one man's commitment, not mutual recognition. Remove that commitment, and reality exposes itself. Megan's final message came late one night. This didn't have to happen. She was right. Didn't. All it would have taken was one sentence at that dinner table. One correction. One defense. But silence had chosen for her. And I had finally chosen for myself. Sometimes I still see that dinner table. Not the plates. Not the food. Not Megan's mother pretending not to hear. The tone. That's what lingers. Calm. Certain. Almost bored. He's not family, he just pays the bills. I've replayed it 100 times in my head, trying to find hesitation in her voice. trying to detect even the smallest crack in her conviction. There wasn't one. That's what makes truth unbearable, when it's delivered without emotion. Weeks passed after Megan left my apartment door that day. The messages slowed. The urgency in them dulled into resentment, then into distance. Ryan never stepped up. I knew he wouldn't. I didn't need updates to confirm it. A man who walks away once doesn't suddenly grow a spine because paperwork arrives in certified mail. Chloe's college plans adjusted. Loans with higher interest. Payment plans stretched thinner. The car was refinanced under harsher terms. Megan picked up extra shifts. Life did what life always does. It recalibrated. But here's the part no one wants to admit. They didn't collapse. They struggled. They complained. They blamed. But they survived. And that survival proved something I had ignored for years. I was never indispensable. I was convenient. There's a difference. Convenience is praised while it's available, forgotten when it withdraws. Indispensability is defended. No one defended me. I rented the San Marcos apartment for 6 months, long enough to feel the absence settle into something permanent. I didn't rush into dating, didn't seek distraction. I worked. I saved. I rebuilt quietly. The first time my paycheck landed in an account that belonged only to me, I stared at the number longer than necessary. Not because it was large, because it was unshared. There was no mental subtraction for school fees, no anticipation of emergency expenses, no invisible obligation tethered to it. For years, I had told myself generosity made me bigger. I see now it made me smaller, because generosity without respect is erosion. You don't notice it at first. The edges wear down slowly. Comment here, a silence there, a comparison to the biological father delivered like fact. Until one day you look in the mirror and realize you've been reduced to utility. Megan called one last time months later. Not to apologize. To inform me Chloe had deferred college for a semester. She's under a lot of stress, Megan said flatly. This situation didn't help. I let the accusation hang. I didn't create the situation, I answered. She was a kid, Megan insisted. She was certain. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear traffic in the background. Maybe she was sitting in her car. Maybe she didn't want Chloe overhearing. You could have been the bigger man, she finally said. I almost laughed. I had been the bigger man for 6 years. Bigger when I absorbed comparisons. Bigger when I paid quietly. Bigger when I accepted a secondary position in my own household. Being bigger had only made me easier to step on. I chose dignity, I replied. She didn't respond to that. We hung up without goodbye. Sometimes, late at night, I ask myself whether I could have handled it differently. I could have confronted Chloe at that table. Forced Megan to respond. Demanded respect instead of withdrawing support. Maybe. But respect demanded isn't respect earned. It's compliance. And compliance disappears the moment pressure lifts. What I removed wasn't love. It was subsidy. If you're not family when you give, you're not obligated to be family when you take your name back. That's the lesson no one wants to hear. People believe sacrifice guarantees belonging. It doesn't. Belonging requires recognition. I think about Chloe sometimes, older now, navigating consequences that feel unfair from her perspective. I don't hate her. I don't even resent her anymore. She spoke her truth, and I responded with mine. Megan once told me I confused pride with principle. Maybe. But I know this. A man who allows himself to be defined as a wallet eventually becomes one. Flat. Folded. Empty. I refused to stay folded. Do I miss them? I miss the idea of what I thought we were. I miss the version of myself who believed effort alone could rewrite bloodlines. But I don't miss the silence at that table. I don't miss the way Megan looked down instead of up. I don't miss feeling tolerated in a home I financed. Sometimes people ask why I left without fighting. Because the fight had already been decided. You can't argue with someone's definition of you. You can only accept it or remove yourself from it. I chose removal. They adjusted. So did I. Now I ask you the only question that matters. If you had spent years building a life where your presence was reduced to payment, if you had heard a child you raised calmly declare you were nothing but a bill payer and watched your partner say nothing, would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Or would you have finally stepped back and let the definition stand?